Greetings and salutations, friends. My name is, of course, Charles Q. Banks, and I'd like to welcome you to my little discussion on an apparently little-known anime. At least, I thought it was little known, but an anime that hasn't gotten a lot of love in the last few years in the short time span that it has existed. But, of course, in the time span of anime nowadays, they usually last anywhere between a year and 2 years if they're really good, and if they're masterpieces, then they'll last the test of time. But seasonal anime is is kind of a beast that has a very small lifetime, very small lifespan, like a fly, if you will. It's all based on popularity. However, this show that I'm going to be talking about is one that came out and finished airing in 2014, June of 2014, which is now 4 years ago, and I never heard a word of it. It's done by Studio Bones. Um, I'm very happy to be talking about anime again, by the way. But, and I'm so excited I can, because this is an anime I can actually get behind. At least for now. But it's made by Studio Bones, which should tell you a lot about any show that comes out of Bones. Which is that it's a masterpiece, at least in terms of visuals. Anything that they make ends up being either a modern masterpiece in all aspects, or just entertaining in general. Case in point, Fullmetal Alchemist, Brotherhood, Noragami. Even though that isn't a masterpiece, it's still greatly beloved by many people. Boku no Hero Academia is super popular, probably the most popular anime out airing right now. Soul Eater, also, just a fantabulously enjoyable adaptation, even if it's not too faithful in the end to its manga. And Darker Than Black, one of my favorites, a total masterpiece, I don't care what you say. Uran High School Host Club, which is also just an incredibly entertaining comedy. I would also say it's a masterpiece of comedy. Gothic, I haven't seen that, but it's really in my wheelhouse, I should say. Bungo Stray Dogs, which is an excellent show. And the list goes on. Kekai Sensen, I haven't seen that, so I can't speak to it, but that's a lot of really amazing shows. And this one is, as far as I've gotten into it, which is about 8 episodes, is just as good as the average of all the shows I just mentioned so far. I know that if this show had been amazing all throughout to the end, it probably would have been up there on the charts even today. But yeah, when it comes to this show from 2014, never saw it. So I was looking through shows recently on Verve, because I watch anime via my PS4, because my computer goes on the fritz every once in a while. I was just bored and looking for things to watch, and anyway, my list gets out of hand sometimes, and sometimes I'm just tired of watching depressing movies from the 80s. Akira, I watched recently. Man, is that intense. So I was wanting something a little not as intense, but something still artistic, not just rom-com, because I'm constantly watching anime rom-coms, if you care to believe it. And I saw this kind of Victorian-looking girl with a sniper rifle, and I thought, why is this catering directly to me, and why have I never seen it before? So I clicked on it, and the first episode is beautifully, if not animated, beautifully drawn, I'll just say, because the animation is just as, I'll say, framey, low in frame rate, as any other anime. But it's very well choreographed, amazing fight sequences and battles that actually make sense, and you can tell where everyone is, but it's also really flashy and stylized, with like crazy magic, Victorian slash medieval era stuff going on in the same time period, with like skeletal demonic unicorns that chase people with like, shooting blue energy blasts, that get cut in half by the sniper rifle shot, of the titular character, and like swords, whip swords, like one would find in Bloodborne, the cane whip that separates into like dozens of smaller blades, and you whip creatures with the blades. Things like this happen in every episode, and it's a mystery that is unfolding at a very fast clip. And it also has this like fairy tale setup in which the main characters have to go on a journey, the hero's journey, in this like in this like fantasy world that in which they have to meet one character to get a magical item, fight them, figure out their weakness, their issue, go through some sort of rigorous physical or mental or emotional test, and then recoup, become more powerful, and then move on to the next hero that they have to defeat, because they're fighting heroes from a war that happened not too long ago, that apparently brought about peace. And another interesting thing that I have to mention about this show, when I was looking into it, when I just saw the beautiful imagery, I clicked on it and I read the plot synopsis, and I understood even less about the show than I did just looking at the art, because it was just a military history summary of like a century or something, in which this giant magical war is fought between an Emperor Arthur Gaze and I think the Alliance of Vespit, and it's this giant, historical war in which Vespit tries to take their independence from this sorcerer emperor. And it just tells you about how many soldiers and monsters are involved in each battle and in each force, and the politics behind it. And I'm like, but what's the show about? Who is this girl, and who is the guy, and who is the other girl, and what? So it keeps the mystery of what is happening all throughout the first episode. It doesn't really tell you who Chaika, the Coffin Princess, is in the first episode, because the main character doesn't know who she is in the first episode. And the main character, while he is something of a blank slate, an overpowered blank slate, he's still intelligent. A lot of protagonists in anime tend to be like overpowered but also clueless. This guy isn't clueless at all. He is aware of, if not other people's like feelings towards him, he knows things are going on. Usually a main character will be loved by everyone and have no idea that that's the case. This guy is like, what's going on? You guys all like me, right? But I can't be in a relationship with any of you because I'm below you, right? And that's the difference. Is he's aware of everything that's going on. He's aware of the fact that certain characters are in love with him, but he thinks that it's impossible that they could ever get together. That's the difference. Whereas, like, I don't know, I can't really think of specific references, but because there's so many, in which the main character is just, well, even Araragi in Bakemonogatari, if anyone has even seen that would be watching this. He is like super smart to a degree. He's clever, at least. Super heroic, but he has no clue that all of the women in his world are in love with him. And still doesn't pick up on it, even though they like basically spell it out, which makes no sense, but it is kind of funny in that show, and they make use of that. But it's a trope that is continued in all these other shows. RE0 is a horrible offender, in which the main character is not capable, not intelligent, and clueless all at the same time. And he has to learn, I guess, with those drawbacks on top of dying all the time and resurrecting into the latest save. And that gives him the ability to change his fate. But he's still stupid and ignorant and clueless. This guy is not, and I love the fact that he isn't the blue-haired protagonist. And I also love the designs. The designs are godlike. It's something I would come up with. It makes me think of something that a friend of mine actually was trying to do in making an anime that was just super over the top, was really political and military-esque, but also like incredibly fantastical. And this show is incredibly fantastical, but also well thought out and well paced. I can't really explain what that means because it would be getting into spoilers, and this whole show is like a giant spoiler because you're just going along with these characters who are trying to survive in this world where there's peace, and they're trying to get these items, these magical items, but we don't know why the main character, Chaika, the Coffin Princess, the goth lolly, if you will, who has an excellent design as well, like, you don't know why she's carrying around this coffin at first. You don't know why she's going after these rather morbid items, magical items, which are like a severed hand and eyeballs and body parts. It's pretty weird. Also, like, it is NC-17. It's rated R, basically. But it doesn't... I don't know. There are things like in the first episode, a unicorn gets split in half, and you see the blood and guts for a split second. But it doesn't focus on that, and it doesn't focus on fan service either, which I am amazed. Like, okay, so I've only seen 8 episodes. Maybe it will get more fan servicey, but so far, even though there's a character, Akari, the green-haired. Non-related by blood sister of the main character. Isn't that convenient? And her design is ridiculous. Like, it makes no sense. Like, she has a little loincloth that's connected to the rest of her bodice, and like little straps that go around, and like her thighs and sides are constantly exposed, as well as her cleavage, and it's like, what? It's not even armor. It's not even like her and her brother used to be in the army, and so this is what they wear. They're army uniforms, but it doesn't cover anyway. So it's that age-old tale of this ridiculous design that's just meant to be sexy. And it makes no sense, but the show doesn't really focus on that or harp on that. It's just like, that's how she's dressed, deal with it. So the show does have, I guess, fan service baked into the character designs themselves. But it doesn't make a whole lot out of it. It doesn't it's not so offensive as something average like Sword Art Online, which just would have these zoom ins right into the butt or right into the cleavage, and it's like, oh, okay, whatever. I hate fan service in anime generally, but it's very non-offensive. Inoffensive, I guess, is the correct term in this show, and I appreciate that greatly. I do feel like because of all of the crazy revelations that you get throughout the show, that there's going to be some kind of crash. Everything is generally like, even though it's mature and there's lots of violence and darkness in the world, sorcery and evil creatures and things, it's all very light and happy with a lot of comedy, strangely enough, um, and a very light tone. I do feel like maybe in the teens of the show, because I think how many episodes are there? Okay, there are only 12 episodes. Um, Once we get up to the last couple of episodes, there will be a very dark turn, and I have no idea if that's the case or not, but I think that's going to be the case, and that could be good or bad. I'm excited to find out because I can't imagine there being this kind of a build-up, this amazing like mystery box constantly being opened every episode, and it pay off to something stupid. It may happen, but based on the way it's going right now, this could be like an 8 or 9 on my list of like a rating of what I think of the show. But we'll see. The art design is almost a 10 out of 10, just in my book. As well as the battles, they're just great. Sometimes the models are off model. The animation takes dips every once in a while. But I knew this would happen. Where the first 2 episodes, basically, the first 2 episodes are amazingly animated, and then the rest of the show just kind of becomes more average in animation department. So, I so far would suggest it, and I am amazed that such a great story, such a well done, well written story has just gone past my notice. If you like stories like Sword Art Online, if you like straight fantasy, this is not an isekai story. It's not a video game world. It's just pure fantasy. Unless it all ended up being a game in the end, or a dream. That would be very disappointing. But it's more pure and much more just creative and unique than an isekai story in which someone is playing a video game and then gets transported to another world. So yeah, I love it so far. I'll let you know in part 2 when I finish the show what my final thoughts are. Thanks for watching. If you've watched this far, please consider subscribing, liking, and ringing the notification bell for whenever I do finish the next part. All right, until then.